So a couple months ago in my global business class, my teacher randomly stormed up to me in the middle of a class period and asked me if I was interested in the idea of competition spelling. Now, for some context, as someone who still has to say the phrase Wednesday out loud to spell the word Wednesday, I'm not really that great at spelling, obviously. But because I'm a people pleaser, I'm in speech and debate, which means I just like to talk a lot, I kind of told her that I would love to spend the next 2 months learning a bunch of words for fun and for extra credit in class. So I was given a list of 1,500 desultory, aka random words, to learn by the end of the 2 months. And I honestly only memorized 3, which is probably why I didn't do that great on the test, but I digress. From words like a petosphere, aka grave wax, to zoe, which as far as I can tell is some hybrid between a yak and a cow. But my favorite word of them all definitely has to be the word brouhaha, which roughly translates to an oversighted reaction to something. So for instance, when I got the email that I would be speaking here today, I basically had a brouhaha. It's a funny word, I get it. I laughed too when they said it in the competition. But this word is really interesting because it's derived from medieval France and roughly translates to bro, ha ha. Who would have thought? Medieval French people were really creative. But this word and so many others, like 1,499 others of them, they don't have any meaning without one key word. Now, this word is super complex. It can't find it in Merriam-Webster's dictionary or ChatGPT like I tried to do, but you can find it within yourself. Why? What is your why? Now, the majority of you here today are real adults, definitely older than I am and with way more life experience, which means you kind of did the thing. You grew up through childhood, got the grades, did the extracurriculars, got into college, burned out through senioritis, then went through college, graduated, and now you have a healthy, stable life. But why? What was your intrinsic motivation to do all of those things? Was it a kind of mob mentality where you just looked around and saw everyone else doing it, so you decided, I should do it too? Why? So, in order to understand the teenage mindset behind our motivations, let's begin ab initio, or at the beginning, of my personal high school life and speech and debate career, to the activity that derailed my life and now has completely changed it. So, during my freshman year of high school, I was 14 and way too optimistic. And it was also the first year back from the coronavirus pandemic for in-person learning, which meant I was the guinea pig in more ways than one. I was the guinea pig to in-person learning and also just being a freshman in high school, which I'm sure none of you would ever want to relive. But during my freshman year, I thought this was the healthiest way to plan out my life. Every single assignment and test and hangout that was impromptu, but I'd actually scheduled 2 months in advance because my parents wouldn't have let me go out otherwise. But, you know, love them. And I even scheduled my breaks, which wasn't really that hard considering I didn't take that many of them. But here's the thing, it wasn't just my unhealthy habits, it was everyone in my grades. I saw this behavior reflected around me, from my classmates within my own team or on my tennis team. And I saw that none of us really actually enjoyed what we were learning because we weren't learning anything. We were just regurgitating information for the next test we'd had to take. So, by the time my sophomore year rolled around, I'd pretty much lost it. It being my mind and my motivation. I stopped planning. I joined random activities on a whim, and I basically hated going to class. But when I joined speech and debate, because I needed the credit to graduate, I learned the meaning of the word extemporaneous. Spoken or done without preparation. Now, I won't bore you with the logistics of a speech and debate event that is not really relevant to this talk, but I will tell you this. Extemporaneous speaking, being able to do things off of the cuff, is an important skill. The word extemporaneous is basically a really professional way of saying BSing, which I'm sure most of you have done. I've definitely done it in my life. I mean, come on, who hasn't BS something in their life, or has, rather? If you aren't raising your hand, you're BSing something right now, by the way, just letting you know. But again, it's not a bad thing. It's a really important skill to be able to speak off the cuff and go off script. But for a lot of high schoolers and now college graduates and real people in the real world, you need every single word planned out for you to say. Every comma and every period, it has to be there. Because if it isn't, then what else are you going to do? So when a lot of high schoolers experience burnout, it's because they're severely over-planning. And that comes a lot from the idea of senioritis. Now, the United States Department of Education wrote a paper on the idea of senioritis. They found that essentially it was a lack of motivation that came from the final year of your education. So whether it was high school or college, a lot of people, once they figure out the next few steps, they're kind of done with the current ones. And it makes sense. Your future feels so immediate and so impending. Why else would you care about, I don't know, your high school econ assignment that you have to turn in? It doesn't feel like it matters. And once you've set your mark to go on that course, then who else really cares? But the problem with senioritis is that it has detrimental effects far beyond than just your grades. The Pew Research Center in 2019 conducted a study where they found that 61% of all teenagers from ages 13 to 18 felt that academics was their #1 pressure. But it wasn't pressure like the light squeeze of a stress ball. It was crippling anxiety and depression that left them unable to use their voice. In this same study, the Pew Research Center found that this led to 70% of all young adults having anxiety for the future, which makes sense. Once you've planned out your next steps and you're about to go do far bigger things, why would you care about what you have to do right now? This idea of senioritis is accurately reflected in every high schooler. I might be a junior, but I've already felt it. Whether it was the sophomore slump that led me to join speech and debate, being able to do things extemporaneously is so critically important. But it comes down to our personal vocabularies, or our lexicons. And our lexicons enable us to focus on what's most important. Because here's the thing, whether you're in high school, college, or you're an adult, people are focusing on these complex sounding words like the word lexicon or brouhaha in order to forward their personal or professional careers. And this isn't a bad thing. Motivation is intrinsically good for progress. But if there's no drive behind it, then of course we're gonna all burn out by the end of our 4th year at the latest. It's so important to continue to define your why. It's the most basic word of them all. It's only 3 letters, but it's also the most important one. You can call a lexicon a dictionary, or you can call brouhaha just excitement. There are synonyms for all of these words, but there isn't for your why. So, what I ask for all of you here today is to redefine your why. Why? I probably sound like a nagging child saying the question why over and over again, but it's a very real question. Why? What gets you to do the things that you do every single day? Is it a person? A passion? Some figment of your imagination? Whatever it is, it's the most important thing in your life. If you don't understand your why, then everything you've written in your script for life simply doesn't matter. There was a point that nailed this down for me when I was last summer. I was at speech and debate camp, desperately trying to get good enough to do anything I've done this year. And I was sobbing on the floor of my dorm room, just asking my mentor for help. I had given the worst speech of my life, and I was just incredibly nervous, kind of like I am now. And the only thing that he asked me to do was to remember why I started. And I did. I did all of this to find my voice for other people. And now I'm using it to talk to all of you here today. So this is what I ask of you. remember why you started. Maybe it's not for the assignment you have to do or the job that you're being paid for, but for your intrinsic motivation. Why do you do any of the things you do? It can be pretty small and selfish, like it is for me, using my voice. I mean, I wouldn't have done this otherwise my freshman year. But you need to know why you started. Because without that solid base, you won't be able to do anything extemporaneously. So often in life, we take these scripts that are so tightly planned for our lexicons or our careers, and we make sure that everything fits. Every T is crossed, every I is dotted. But when you forget a comma, a period, or you have to say Wednesday out loud, you're going to forget something. And without the ability to go back to that real definition of your why, then, well, you can pretty much throw the entire script into a dumpster fire. So, why? Why do you do the things that you do every single day? That is the single most important word I am asking you to define. We're not redefining anything, because so many of us, there was no definition to begin with. It was a blank page in its essence. But when we're using tools like Grammarly or ChatGPT to try and come up with our whys, just be sure you're actually using your own brain. Because, well, you can tell them to try and write you a TED Talk, and it probably won't go that well. But you can't get them to do more than just write an essay. Your life is your own lexicon, your own dictionary. So make sure you understand its most basic definitions. Why? There are infinitely more words than 1,500 of them to memorize for some spelling test. But there's one word that you can't memorize, you just have to innately understand. Why? And so when you're looking at that blank page of your personal dictionary, and you finally are able to fill out that definition, just look at it, laugh, and brouhaha. Thank you.